Half of the two-night crossover event for The Flash and Arrow. Heroes Join Forces, what it's called. And this, of course, was The Flash's episode, Season 2, Episode 9, Episode 8, Legends of Today. And obviously, it was pumped out of my mind for this episode. The crossover last year went really, really well. But it really wasn't much of a crossover. It's more of just Arrow visited The Flash, and The Flash visited Arrow. That very much is what happened last year. And this year's definitely seemed like it was gonna be a lot bigger. It seemed like there was gonna be a lot more of a bigger story, because everything's established at this point. You know, everyone from The Flash knows each other, and everyone from Arrow knows each other. So there really wasn't much more to do, except to have a really good story. And damn, did they have a great story. I mean, yes, this was a lot of setup, I will say that. If you guys don't like episodes with a lot of exposition, this episode definitely had that. This was definitely the more exposition heavy, a lot of story, things like that. But you know what? It was a really great start to what is going to be a great crossover. I know part 2 is going to be great. I've heard amazing things about it. You know, not I've heard amazing things about, but this, first part of it, I've actually heard really great things about both these parts, and I was definitely really looking forward to it, and I think it's going to be a great second part. But let's just get into this episode, which started off like a regular Flash episode, and then slowly turned into a crossover, and this definitely felt more like a crossover, like I said, than the first part did, and I really like that. So, right away, we see Barry has been running a lot, trying to get faster so he can defeat Zoom, and Caitlin and Wells are watching him on the treadmill, and he's not fast enough, and he's actually complaining that he's not fast enough, which is interesting, because usually Wells last year was the one that did that, and Barry's actually concerned, which is a good concern, because obviously Zoom, as we know, is a lot faster, and just is a lot more advanced than he thought. So basically, Zoom is 3 or 4 times faster, and Barry leaves to meet Patty. He doesn't really want to deal with this, but I like seeing Barry genuinely concerned about his speed, because, yeah, it is a worry, especially when he's going to have to face Zoom, which I don't think is going to be next week, but it definitely is going to be soon, because, you know that's coming up. Him going to have to face Zoom, and him being concerned about, his speed is a really big concern. So, the captain of a ship walks onto the deck after weeks at sea. 3 weeks ago, he found a stowaway who had 32 knives on him. The stowaway speaks for the first time. He's waited a long time for this hunt. Suddenly, as if by magic, the stowaway gets his handcuffs off. Onto the captain. The stowaway kills everyone in the dock, reclaims his knives, and leaves. I mean, if you guys don't usually like the villains on The Flash or Arrow, this is a great example of how you do a really menacing villain, because let me just say, the villain we're introduced to for this crossover is very menacing, and I really like that. I honestly would like to see him again on Legends of Tomorrow. That's how great I think he is. So at the police station, Barry, Joe, and Patty look at pictures of the crime scene on the dock. Barry explains that there was only one killer, and there are pieces of the knife in the victims. Patty thinks that it was a metahuman, and she and Barry try to act professional, which makes Joe laugh and call them cute for not being affectionate in front of him. Joe is the one character that has, like, nothing to do in this entire episode. He's in this one scene, well, he's in 2 scenes, and other than that, he's barely in this episode, which, again, I understand this was a crossover. Joe really was the one that had the least amount of screen time, which is fine, because I think we've gotten a lot with him, so it's fine that we had enough with him. It wasn't like they didn't single-handedly skip him. They did include him, but he was the one that was barely in this, which would be kind of funny if he's in it more tomorrow night's episode, which I kind of feel like is going to happen the direction we're headed in tomorrow night, which I'll get into, but I love how he's calling Barry and Patty out for trying to act professional. I thought that was definitely very funny. So, after hours, Kendra lets Cisco into Jitters for a date, and I really like these two so far, and I was very interested in seeing how Cisco and Kendra was going to go, because as we know, Cisco started to get vibes from her in the last episode, and she made them dinner. He's very appreciative. They flirt and are about to kiss when the stowaway appears and says he's there for Kendra, who he calls Priestess Shayara. And Cisco secretly texts Barry for help while standing defensively in front of her. He stands up to the stowaway who's about to throw a knife in front of her. That was crazy. He's about to throw a knife at Cisco. The Flash tackles him. The stowaway throws a knife at Cisco, vanishes while the Flash runs, catching the knife inches from Cisco's chest. And this was an awesome scene. I mean, I had no idea what was going on here, and I love that. So forgetting himself, Cisco calls Barry by his name right in front of Kendra. And I love how Barry Barry's just like, yeah, nice going, Cisco. I thought that was really great. This episode was very funny, by the way. That's something else I liked. That while the episode was dark, it was also pretty funny, which worked very well. So, I definitely like seeing that. Cisco just randomly calling Barry, not even thinking about it, I thought was very funny. So in Star Labs, the gang tries to get information from Kendra, but she doesn't know anything about this man. And they try to, they're trying to think, well, there has to be some sort of a connection there. This man can't just randomly show up and not remember her. But clearly she doesn't remember him. So they decide the priority should be to protect her. So Barry thinks they should turn to their friends in Star City, and Cisco is unsure of Barry's motives. He doesn't know if this is a very good idea, but Barry points out that they are scientists who have little experience with magic, whereas Team Arrow has plenty. And we cut right to Star City, which this was really cool, because this was something we didn't get in any of the crossovers. We didn't get a lot of this flip-flopping between worlds, and we did get that here. And I think they really showed in this episode, which I'm not saying they didn't in the Flash Arrow crossover, but here especially, they really showed how distinctly different these two worlds are. The Flash is much more fast-paced, while Arrow is much more dark and gritty and things like that. It's fun, but I like seeing that here. Right away, we see Damian Dark. We see Dark, which it was cool to see Dark for the brief time we do in this episode. And I'm wondering if we're going to get some follow-up to this in, not the Arrow episode, but the mid-season finale next week. We'll have to see. But Dark and his ghosts are stealing a bomb from an Argus truck, and Arrow hits the ground near them, revealing Green Arrow, Speedy, and Diggle the Dark, who claims that they brought arrows to a gunfight. Green Arrow responds by triggering a magnet in the arrow, which puts all the guns away from the ghosts. And while the fight commences, Felicity's in the lair congratulating herself on the success of the magnetic arrow. I thought that was really funny, and she has no idea that Oliver can hear her. That was a great scene. Oliver eventually reminds her that she's on an open comm link. I thought that was really great. Dark gets his hand on Green Arrow and is killing him when the Flash speeds past, grabbing and rescuing Green Arrow. And Dark is impressed. He's like, what was that? I love Dark's reaction. I mean, this is Dark, who was very menacing and seemed very powerful. And then Flash just speeds by him and he's like, what was that? That was great. I love that. So off the side, Diggle again vomits from motion sickness due to the Flash speeding him away as well. And again, I love how every time Diggle sees the Flash, he's either freaking out, he's either throwing up, or something's going on with him. It's just great. And his line where he's just like, I can't control it, always happens. And then Thea's surprised to learn that they all know the Flash because she's the only one that didn't know of the Flash. Like, she's seen him. The last time she saw him, though, was the finale. That was the last time she saw the Flash, and that was the first time that she met him. So I thought that was really great there. So at the lair, Barry is alternately hugged and hit by Felicity, who's happy to see him, but angry he didn't tell her about his recently broken back. I love the scene where Barry checks out, the new Arrow Cave, which I thought was definitely really great. I definitely really liked seeing that. I thought that was very funny. But what really killed me, the scene that really got me laughing, is when he sees Oliver's new costume, and he's like, "Aren't you cold?" And I thought that was great, because yeah, it is sleeveless. It's not warm there. It's quite cold. I can totally understand what he's saying there. So she's happy to see him, but angry didn't tell her about his recently broken back. And Barry is like, well, I guess this is what it's like dating Felicity. And Cisco's critical of the lair and says they need copper wiring to fix the power outages, which still plague them. Eventually, Kendra's introduced to the gang, and Barry speedily sketches the Stowaway's face, which is apparently an idea that Diggle didn't have before, which I think is really cool. So, Felicity, and of course, Kendra is mind-blown right now because she just met the Flash, and now she's met the Arrow, and I think that's great that she's met both of them in one day. Felicity offers to run through facial recognition. She finds a picture of him from 1975 looking just as young as he does now. So there's clearly something off about this man. We don't know who he is, but there's something off about him. Oliver begins to question Kendra, and both Cisco and Barry call him out on his harshness, that he's just being way too harsh about it, and basically, I thought that was definitely a really interesting scene. I definitely like seeing that. And we do get some stuff from Star Labs in this episode, because obviously this is a Flash episode. Even though this is a crossover, this is a Flash episode, and I like that we did have a genuine continuing story, like we did last year. We did have a subplot from Arrow last year, and we had a subplot from the Flash when we had the Flash crossover. And what I like from this is that it showed that even though, this is a Flash Arrow crossover, this is still a Flash episode. That's mainly what this is supposed to be. Now, I thought this was definitely really great. I definitely really like seeing this here. Definitely, I really love this. So, back at Star Labs, Wells is telling Caitlin about his 5 attempts at making a serum for Jay, so increasing his speed. They were all failures, and Caitlin points out that Wells is an inventor, and her medical knowledge could help him, and together, they come up with a new version of the serum, and this is very interesting. We'll get into this a little bit later, but you know, I've been saying I think Wells can be trusted. I'm not so sure after this episode, guys. Honestly, there are a few things that he does that really makes me question what his real plan is here. And I will get into that, but basically, Felicity wanted to go to their apartment because they're all friends now, and I thought that was really good. She's like, you know what, we're all friends, let's just go to our apartments, and Cisco offers to come with a better name for Thea because he doesn't think Speedy is good enough, which I thought was very funny. And Barry and Felicity and I love Thea's comeback. Her comeback was just great. You know what? Why don't you get a haircut and then talk to me about it? I thought that was just hilarious. And he's like, you know, there's too much conditioner in this hair. I thought that was just great. He's like, you know, you can't handle this hair. So many great lines there. I loved it. And just little things like that were so great. Barry and Felicity catch up with each other. He tells her about Patty, and when Felicity goes on her appetizers, Barry and Oliver discuss Barry's decision to ask for help and Oliver's newfound happiness, and I really like this scene because it was juxtaposed to last year's crossover. You remember last year's crossover, there was the whole thing where Oliver was a lot more menacing with his kills, he was a lot darker, and he just was a lot more serious. And here he's not really being as serious. And Barry really does see this because he's actually happy. You know, last year he had a lot more to worry about. He had just lost Sarah. You know, he had Roz after him. He had a lot of things going on. And now he's, you know, he's in that point where he's trying to turn himself around. You really do see that in this episode, and I really like seeing that here. And of course, the biggest thing he told Barry was, we never get the girl. And now Oliver's gotten a girl, and Barry has a girlfriend, so clearly it was bullshit what Oliver said just because he wasn't in a good mood. And I like that we saw that here. Because, yeah, it did sound like good advice at the time, but now that Oliver's a changed man, it's working out for him now. We do know that death is coming, though. We still know that there is a death coming. It could be Felicity. I swear to God, I hope it's not Felicity, because she is by far one of my favorite parts of Arrow in general, but, if they killed her off, I'd be really upset, and I feel like a part of the show would be missing. But Cisco secretly admits to Barry that he vibed on Kendra with wings, and he doesn't want her to know that he is a metahuman, but thinks his image could be part of why she's being targeted, and I like seeing that Cisco genuinely cares for her, but not only does he genuinely care for her, he has feelings for her. Like, he tells Barry, I've, you know, had these feelings that I've never really felt before. I've never liked a girl in this way. I mean, you can clearly tell that Cisco has never really had love before. He's never really understood it. And, you know, Kendra likes a lot of the same things that he does. She's into science, and she loves movies and things like that. And it just seems like they had a really good connection, and he really doesn't want to ruin that. And unfortunately, this pity party is ruined because Kendra sees something in the window. Despite how high up they are, it is the Stowaway who crashes through the window, and that's something I like about this episode. That, like I said, there was time to breathe, but the action scenes in this episode were awesome. All of them were amazing. Barry speeds Oliver, his bow and arrow. The Stowaway throws several knives, aiming at each person in the group. Barry's fast enough to catch each knife except for the one which gets him, and Arrow shoots repeatedly at the Stowaway, who deflects the arrows, and at least until Thea joins him with her own bow. Then she and Oliver each get a hit. Oliver calls for Thea to stop, but she shoots a third time, knocking the Stowaway off the balcony, lost in her bloodlust, and Oliver and Barry look over the edge, where the Stowaway is nowhere to be seen, and they have no idea where he just went. And I like that we don't find out his name in this episode. His name is going to be Vandal Savage, but we don't find out his name in this episode, which I thought was really great. So back at the lair, Barry and Cisco decide to tell Kendra about Cisco's ability to vibe and how he saw her with wings like a bird. And I didn't think he was going to tell her, but he knows he needs to tell her because it's something that's going to be eating up inside of him, and he just needs to tell her. The lights suddenly go out for a second, and when they come back, Malcolm and several members of the League of Assassins are staying in the lair, and they really made up for Malcolm's lack of screen time this season in this episode because, yeah, Malcolm is the main character on Arrow. We've barely seen him this season, which I'm fine with. I like that they haven't shown him unless they needed to, but he is a main character, and I like that they really showed that on The Flash, but they didn't. I don't know if they're going to do it on Arrow. We'll have to see, but I thought that was kind of cool. It's like, you know what? We haven't seen a lot of Malcolm. Let's just make up for that by showing him on The Flash. That was very clever. I will definitely say that. So, basically, I thought that was really great to see, and Caitlin and Wells continue to work on the serum at Star Labs. She thinks she has cracked it, and Jay arrives, then summoned by Wells. Jay recognizes the serum, which is called Velocity 6, and he's furious that Wells considered this an emergency, because he clearly knows this isn't good, and Caitlin isn't sure why Jay is there, but Wells explains that he needs a test subject, and someone who already had the Speed Force inside him, and Jay tells Wells that he does not understand the Speed Force, it is a living thing, and Jay warns him against using Velocity 6 on Barry, and Wells takes off to get the supplies they need to make the serum, and it's not that Wells necessarily a bad guy, it's just he doesn't really understand what he's doing, and this could be really bad for Jay and Barry, so this is definitely could end up really bad for them, and Caitlin, you know, I think knows that Jay is partially right, but she wants to trust Wells, she promised she helped him, and she can't really get out of it, so it's gonna be his word over, you know, Wells' word over Jay's, that's just how it's gonna be. So Malcolm tells the gang that the Stowaway's name is Vandal Savage. The League knows a little bit about him. Now, finally, we learn his name in this this part of the episode. And the League knows a little bit about him. And overwhelmed, Kendra walks away because she has no idea what's going on here. Cisco follows her, and I really love the chemistry between this episode because it's not going to last long. We know, obviously, Legends of Tomorrow, she's headed to that. He's not going to be on there. And then we get what is by far one of the biggest scenes of this episode. I mean, I knew they were doing the subplot, and I at first was like, was this really necessary? Do we really need it for this episode? Then this happened, and this is very interesting. Patty walks to her car, calling Joe regarding the case of the murders on the dock, and she sees Wells get into his car. She's shocked to see him alive. She has no idea what's going on, and I was freaking out here. I'm like, oh shit, is Patty gonna find out what's going on with Barry in this episode? Because if they make Patty, and they could still continue this tomorrow, like, if they continue this tomorrow, I would honestly be fine with that. I don't think they're going to. I think there's going to be something going on in Arrow, because we did not see Laurel in this episode. We did not see... that's it. We did not see Laurel. We didn't see anything going on with Oliver's campaign. I do feel we're going to see that tomorrow night, but if they continue this could definitely get very interesting, because... she's shocked to see him alive, and I really didn't know what was going to happen here, and I was honestly on the edge of my seat in this scene. I love this. So Cisco catches up to Kendra. She does not feel ready to handle all this, and Cisco sympathizes, relating to his similar feelings about finding out he is a metahuman. He promises that every day will get more normal, and, you know, he's really gotten used to his vibes. You remember at the beginning of the season, he had no idea really what to do. He didn't really know how to control them, and it's only taken him a very short amount of time, and he already knows what he's doing, and probably the same thing will happen to Kendra. So suddenly a winged man swoops down, grabs Kendra, flies away with her. We have no idea who this is. And Cisco and Felicity look for Kendra on Felicity's computers in the lair, while the Flash speeds through. By the way, I loved seeing Cisco try to type on Felicity's computer. She's like, no, this is my thing. I thought that was really great. So the Flash speeds through Star City, and Green Arrow rides his motorcycle, also searching. The Flying Man sets Kendra on a rooftop. He also calls her Priestess Chai Ara and himself Khufu, and he recognizes her, but she has no idea who he is, despite a quick flash of memory. So she clearly is starting to remember things, but it's still very hazy. I mean, this is clearly like millions and millions of years ago. This was not a couple years ago. This was millions of years ago. And he tells Kendra that she needs to emerge, and the wingman hears Green Arrow's cycle, flies down to fight him, and Green Arrow tries to shoot him down, but the wings deflect the arrows. Khufu knocks the bike from under the Green Arrow, and that was just, this scene was awesome here. I like that we don't fully understand what's going on here, but we just don't care because it's that awesome. So Cisco tells the Flash where to go. He joins the fight, and Khufu lifts the Flash high into the air and drops him, but Green Arrow saves him. The Flash spins his arms to create a strong wind, which Khufu struggles with. Green Arrow shoots an arrow that ties him up, and the Flash runs around Khufu until he's able to throw lightning at him, impressing Green Arrow. And that was definitely really great because now they know that clearly something is going on with him. They don't know who he is. They know that they could use him, and that's enough for them to realize here. But they still don't know, is he working for Vandal Savage? Should they really trust him? Because for all they know, the story that Vandal Savage could be telling is an absolute lie, and he's just trying to lure Kendra to kill her. They don't really know what's going on. So Wells finishes Velocity 6. Caitlin thinks they should back off based on Jay's warning, and I like that Caitlin said, you know what, maybe this isn't a good idea, and Wells thinks Jay is being a coward, and as Caitlin walks in the next room, Patty appears, and she basically wants to arrest Wells, mentioning Dr. McGee recognized him when he robbed Mercury Labs, and Wells recognizes Dr. McGee's name. Patty sees the syringe of Velocity 6 in his hand, thinks it's a gun, and she shoots him right in the chest. Caitlin runs in, stops Patty from calling 911. I legitimately thought they were going to kill off Harrison Wells in this episode. I shit you not. I honestly thought they were going to do that. I mean, I was freaking out. I'm like, holy shit. Did they just do, like, the biggest plot twist on The Flash when Barry's not even there? I mean, this is what you call a groundbreaking episode of The Flash. I mean, I love that all this stuff is going on while Barry's not there. It's amazing. I honestly would love to see them do an episode like this. Have an episode where Barry's out of town, and then have on The Flash, like, just everything going on while Barry's not there. That would be awesome if they did that. I don't know if they'd ever do that, but that'd be really cool, and this really made me feel like I want them to do that. So, she stops Patty from calling 911, insists she calls Joe instead, because Joe will know what's going on, and I honestly thought Joe was going to reveal all to Patty, and I still think he's going to, because we don't see Patty again after this scene. We'll get into that. But in the lair, Khufu has been chained up, and they don't know who he is. They demand to know, and the gang, minus Kendra, questions him. He asks for Chayara, saying she's the love of his life, and Kendra walks in. He claims that they loved each other for 4,000 years, always being reincarnated and finding each other again. In this life, his name is Carter, and every time they live, they are killed by Vandal Savage. So that's basically, essentially, what Vandal Savage is out there for. Clearly, they're alive. He doesn't want them alive, and it's kind of like a Doctor Who scenario, where no matter what you do, they regenerate, and it's very interesting. So, this is kind of something we haven't dealt with before. I mean, we've never dealt with immortality. That's very interesting. So, their three life forces are tethered. Malcolm shows again, telling them that Vandal Savage has left to find a weapon he's used before, the Staff of Horus, and Felicity goes to search for museums that might have it. And Joe reaches Star Labs. He sends Patty away, asks Caitlin for Wells' prognosis, and she needs Jay's help to save Wells. And why doesn't Joe, I'm sure a lot of you think, why didn't he just tell Patty all? Because he doesn't want her to know. There's too much for her to process. There's too much that's going on. This is not the time for her to know what's going on. It's not the time. It's that simple. It's not the time for her to know. It's too soon. So on a high roof, Carter wants Kendra to jump off so her wings will emerge, and Barry, Cisco, and Oliver are very unsure because they don't know if this is actually going to work, and Oliver's willing to try, and Kendra climbs the ledge, but Carter pushes her with no warning. Barry speeds down the side of the building to catch her and bring her back up, and I like this scene with Oliver and Barry. First of all, seeing Barry and Cisco so concerned about Kendra really was was like the more advanced, was kind of like training. When Oliver was training Barry, very much reminded me of that, because, Barry was a bit, not as, I'm not gonna say, like, bad at what he did, but he wasn't as, what's the word I'm looking for? I can't think of the word right now, guys. But you know what I'm talking about. Like, he wasn't as used to, that's the word. He wasn't as used to being the Flash as he is now. So this very much reminded me of that, because it's kind of like the trainers going after their protege, because Barry kind of sees Kendra as his protege. That's kind of what he sees her as. And so does Cisco. Cisco kind of sees her as his lover, but, Oliver asks Barry for a private word, and Barry admits that despite his powers, the rules keep changing, and he really feels like he has no control over it. I mean, yeah, think about it. The past 3 episodes have been so different, and for not just the Flash, but for Barry in general. First, he had to take down Zoom, then he had to take down Gorilla Grodd, and now they're dealing with immortality. I mean, it's just so different, and I like what Oliver says, that there really is no control over this. And while they talk, Oliver realizes that the reason that Kendra was drawn to Central City was because the staff must be there. It called her. So he's realizing that they probably are going to have to go back to Central City. And Jay arrives at the lab. He asks Caitlin if she can close Wells up if he gets the bullet. She says she can. Joe's confused, so Caitlin explains Jay can take Velocity 6 and use his speed to phase into Wells' chest and get the bullets in spite of his earlier reservations, and Jay doesn't hesitate. He injects himself, which I thought was very interesting. Despite his clashing with Wells, he's gonna save him because he's really their only hope on, getting back to Earth 2, and he knows that they need him. Despite their clashing, he needs him. So it works. He temporarily has his speed again. He phases into Wells' chest and removes the bullets, and that was really cool. And of course, as we know, Jay lost his speed and then he had again. It was really cool to see Jay with his speed here. And on the roof, Kendra and Cisco talk. She says now she knows why she always felt different. He offers to help her, but needs to find out the truth alone. She's ready to embrace her destiny. And I thought this was a really great scene. Again, it really felt like, even though we've only seen Kendra for a few episodes, it really feels like we really well established her character, even though, like I said, we've only seen her for this episode. Well, this is the most we've seen of her, definitely. All we've seen of her up to this is just Cisco's love interest. That's really all we've seen, and the vibes that Cisco had on her. Even though we haven't introduced her in Legends of Tomorrow, this kind of feels like the beginning of that, and I really like that. Which I heard is what they're essentially trying to do. They're essentially trying to make Legends of Tomorrow, the first episode, like a 4-hour movie, and that's why you have these two episodes being so long, like 902, 903, and then you have the first episode, which I believe is going to be 2 hours. So, Vandal Savage senses Kendra and decides to make quick work of the hero. By the way, I forgot to say this. Kendra knows that, basically what happens there. Green Arrow and the Flash reach the church where the staff is supposed to be, but Vandal Savage is already there and has it. They try to fight him, but Vandal used the power of the staff to make Hughes explode, and that was just huge what he's doing there. Kendra knows she's been holding herself back. She jumps and her wings emerge, and Cisco's a bit afraid, but then when he sees her, I love her. He's just like, that is awesome. I mean, he's just fanboying out. I love that. Vandal senses Kendra, decides to make quick work of the heroes. He uses the Staff of Horus to make the church explode, but the Flash gets Green Arrow in safety to time, and Kendra lands badly on the roof and tells Cisco she needs to learn how to use her wings, and he names her Hawk Girl, and I love that Cisco was the one that named her that. That is just great, and it really made me wonder, what would Cisco call Speedy? What would his name for her be? Quick Girl. I mean, think about it. Hawk Girl, Quick Girl. That's probably what he calls Speedy. If Thea wasn't already named Speedy, he probably would have called her Quick Girl. So, Wells wakes up. He thanks Jay for saving him. Jay tells him that his speed is going to get in to never give Barry the serum. It's not a good idea. There's clearly something very wrong with it, and it worked on Jay, but remember, Jay didn't have his speed. Barry does have his speed. So what exactly does this do? We don't really know what this serum does, but there clearly is something wrong with it, and I'm kind of worried that Barry's going to end up taking some of it next week. I'm really worried about it, because I'm thinking they're going to have to keep it far away from him, but clearly Wells wants him to take it, and I feel like Wells is going to have him take it, and we don't know what's going on with this serum. Remember, Wells just doesn't fully understand speedsters as well as, Jay does. So this is going to be very interesting to see what happens with this. So Oliver calls Diggle. Team Arrow needs to come to Central City to help fight Vandal Savage, and I love how this episode, the Flash went to Star City, and then Arrow's going to Central City. I mean, that's so different, and I love that. So Carter thinks them all working together is their best chance. They all decide to reach out to Laurel, who is in Central City anyway, visiting her mom, and that's great. I love that we found out where Laurel was, because, they could have easily just made it seem like, oh, we're not going to see Laurel, but I thought that was really great. And then we get the final scene, which was honestly pretty heartbreaking, I have to say. I thought this scene was really sad. At Jitters, Oliver notices a drink named about after the Flash and asks Barry about it. A little boy drops a Flash action figure, which makes Oliver laugh. He watches the boy go to his mom. We realize this is the woman that he got pregnant a decade ago, and even though Oliver, is in that period where he's trying to move on, he's trying to be a better person, he still is thinking about that life he could have had, and I really feel like now that he's in Central City, he is definitely going to confront this woman. I mean, it didn't happen last year, but I definitely feel like it's going to happen this year. I mean, it needs to. It needs to. They can't just introduce this and not have it happen, in tomorrow night's episode. But damn, guys, what an amazing first part. I loved everything going on in this episode. There's a lot of things I definitely want to question. I mean, we already saw how powerful, Vandal Savage is. I mean, he clearly is a very menacing villain. I can't wait to see what happens there. I really love what's going on with that. That definitely is going to be very interesting. I like that we saw a very brief stuff of Dark. We're clearly not going to see Dark at all on Arrow tomorrow unless they go back to Star City, which I assume tomorrow night's episode will end with them going back to Star City. We'll have to see, but are they going to continue the Serum storyline tomorrow night? I mean, that could be interesting if they do, because again, I want to see more with Patty, but is Patty going to find out what's going on with Barry? I feel like eventually she has to put those clues together. I mean, she's very smart, so I feel like she needs to understand what's going on there. I feel like Cisco is starting to realize that he's going to have to let Kendra go, that, you know, even though he wants to be with Kendra, she needs to be with Carter. I mean, Kendra and Carter, they're meant to be together. He can't stop that from happening, even though I think Carter is a really good guy for her. I'm not saying that. I just think that, you know, Cisco and Kendra, he really wants to be with her, and I think he understands, though, that she needs to be with someone like Carter rather than someone like him. And it's really sad, but I feel like he understands that, so that's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens with that. Is Oliver going to confront this woman? We'll have to see. I don't know if he's going to. That's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens there. He needs to confront her because clearly there's something going on there. I like seeing the difference between Oliver and Barry and like the similarities. I like seeing that as well. That's definitely something I think is really great. Are they going to be able to take down Vandal Savage? I honestly don't know. He seems really impossible to take down. We'll have to see what's going on here. I'm pretty sure they're going to have to bring in, like, Ray Palmer and people like that. I definitely feel like we're going to see them maybe in tomorrow night's episode because I know tomorrow night's episode is called Legends of Yesterday, so we'll have to see what happens with that. Why is Laurel what's going to happen with Laurel in the visit to her with her mom? We're going to see what happens with that. But let me know what you guys saw this episode. Overall, guys, amazing episode. Such a great crossover. Already better than last year's. I'll tell you why, guys. Last year's revolved around Barry having this, you know, taking this, like, gas that made him evil, and then that was it, and then we moved on to an Arrow episode, and that was something completely different. This is much different than that. This is a recurring storyline, has a cliffhanger. It's going to continue tomorrow night, and I keep saying next week. It's going to continue tomorrow night, and I love that. Let me know what you guys saw this episode. I love this first part. I can't wait for tomorrow night's second part, and I will see you guys in my next video, which will be for tonight's episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.